Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark. Be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Hello there, Eric Kiss, which is Charles Rogers, and hello, Reek the Whirlwind. Hello, Chris Miller. Hello, everyone else that are here as well. Thank you so much for coming in. Charles Rogers, today we're going to talk about Bill Hutson and the Cobb County Corruption. How are you doing today? Uh-oh, you went away. Where'd you go? You were here, Charles. Hello.
About that.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
And did you hear what I was saying? So we're going over the Cobb County Correction um, and also Bill Hudson.
Yeah, it's still like an echo.
Yeah, you had to close out the the YouTube profile, okay?
Okay. All right.
So you got that handled?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is that better?
hmm
So how are you doing today?
I
Here.
believe I got it all closed out now.
Okay. So it sounded okay now?
Yes, ma'am.
So welcome to Child Abuse Awareness again. You got 5 listeners here, 4 or 5 listeners. And you probably got some at Facebook also. So, without further ado, I'll let you start however you want to, because you wanted to do Bill Hudson and Cobb County Corrections. How'd all,
Yeah, yeah. I would like to, like I was trying to do earlier, and I apologize to everyone for the inconvenience, but it was a very poor signal where I was at, and I couldn't get this echo off, and um, so thank you for bearing in with us until we could get everything set up at this time.
you're
But
quite welcome.
like I was saying earlier, if I remember correctly, Bill Hudson he became sheriff in Cobb County in 1977, maybe 76 or 78, but he was sheriff. I know of Cobb County in 1979 um, when I had the issues at Northside Christian Schools um, that I had, which wound up, getting the school shut down toward the end of the school year. And um, he upheld the 6 week suspension when Buck Kraft was the police chief of Marietta, who later became chief deputy under him, um, which even Buck Kraft was a friend of my dad's, and also I considered Buck as a buddy of mine as well because um, Buck really wasn't that bad of a guy as far as I was concerned. Um, but all these years later, I still kind of question his integrity due to the enterprises over there on Bentley Farm. Um,
Yeah, I
there
thought
was
that was interesting when you had showed me also the picture of where that road is blocked.
Yes, they blocked that off last year after I started releasing information on social media about Bentley Farm.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm going to go ahead and share that picture if I could. Well, it's supposed to be somewhere on here. Got all these pictures that are saved to the thing today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here it is. Right, I believe it's right here. And everybody could see how they got the road blocked off right here. Did you see the screen too, Charles?
Yes, ma'am. They blocked that off after I started releasing the information on social media regarding the dead bodies that was buried there, according to Ed Bentley Jr., which is really George Bentley Jr., but people would call the dad George and call the son Ed, to distinguish the difference, between the two of them. Like Sam Duncan and his son, Sam Duncan Jr. in Murphy, North Carolina.
Yeah, I had
Everyone
trouble
seems to
getting
be,
George Bentley's picture, but I got Ed Bentley, and you could see everybody look at the screen down there, and you see Ed Bentley on the far left on the bottom.
well, on the far right from what I'm seeing there by, um, I don't know if that's his sister or daughter Alice Summerer. Um, she's also an attorney, like their cousins, Fred Bentley Jr. and Randall Bentley Sr. of Bentley Law Group there in Marietta. These are the same people um, who tried to exploit me and set my dad up in 1972 and 1973 for the distribution of child pornographic material.
Exactly.
Um,
And you,
Targeted me
you,
and used
I'm trying
the
to, I'm trying to pinpoint the people when you said, that, and so I wanted to show people where, okay, this right here is actually Ed
that's
Bentley Jr.
yeah, George Edward Bentley Jr. He
And
goes
who was
by
the other one? You said Fred Bentley Sr. right here. That's him right
this
here.
man. One looks like the keeper of the crypt.
Oh yeah. And then here is Fred Bentley Jr. right here.
Hmm.
And Alice Summers, she's at the top of the page here. It's amazing how many times, and she even made the article when the last born was on fire again, saying, it's amazing how many times that burn could get all the different barns have caught fire.
Yes, ma'am. That's why people from Marietta who have commuted out the 120 loop is what we who are native to the area always refer to it, because it makes kind of like a teardrop is the way it looks like. I've always called it the teardrop of Marietta, because the amount of children who have suffered at the hands of the Bentleys. There on Bentley Farm, who's it is really called Blackjack Stables, um, horse ranch. But back in the 70s, it was both. It was a cattle ranch and a horse ranch, and the two rows of concrete stables you used to be able to see from the 120 loop were destroyed with other barns. The ones that you reminded me of, I had forgotten about the wooden barn, and of course the concrete barn.
Yeah.
Um, all of that was destroyed, if I remember correctly, in 1980. Um,
So, so the places I have been in, two of the places, have been destroyed.
yes, ma'am. The concrete barn where they held their victims. The red barn where they tried to get me into to, do the stuff that they wanted me to do with. If I remember her name correctly, was Marissa Stubbs, George Bentley's son-in-law, Jim Stubbs. Um,
This right here is the one of the barn fires, and this was 2022. But we're talking about even in these fires have been going on for decades.
yes, ma'am. And it's really to destroy forensic evidence. Um,
And it
but
said right here, a Marietta barn owned by attorney Alice Summerer and her family burned down early Monday. So it does mean that she is related to the Bentleys.
yes, ma'am. But Bill, he became sheriff. He's from Blairsville, Georgia. And my dad used to build houses with his cousins, Charles and Richard Hutson, who used to kind of live almost across the road from us there on Ebenezer Road, which was right down the road from Bill and his sister Betty Elrod. And it was Betty's brick mailbox that I witnessed. Mike McLaughlin, who later became Judge McLaughlin of the magistrate,
Yeah.
magistrate of Cobb County, in
He's at the
progress.
top. He's at the top right there beside Fred.
Yeah, up there
Everybody looks
about
at their screen. They're up
the left
there.
of the keeper of the crypt, and right above my brother Fred Rogers's picture.
Right.
Um, I have also released um, pictures of him of being one of the I-70 serial killers. But apparently, this assassination um, or execution was carried out for the Bentleys and Sheriff Bill Hutson because the 1970 Chevelle that crashed into Betty Elrod's brick mailbox, she lived right next door to her brother Bill. Um, he had originally moved down from Blairsville and became a city of Marietta police officer. You know, one of my cousins, Milton Vanaver, used to call him a hothead. You know, just and that would be the best way to describe him because after he became sheriff of Cobb County, he became like the leading sheriff for the Georgia Sheriff's Association. And he really transitioned the aggressiveness of the Cobb County law enforcement, the police department, both city of Marietta and later in Cobb County, into bringing what I call hostile law enforcement agencies. Um, After his term as sheriff, or during his term as sheriff, and he was a member of the Kennesaw Masonic Lodge there at the corner of Fairground Street and Roswell Street there in Marietta. You would think the Kennesaw Lodge would be located in Kennesaw, Georgia, but it's not. It's right there in Marietta. And of course, in 1980, I had joined the DMLA, originally out of the Springville Lodge in Powder Springs, Georgia, because my Uncle Morris Veach was a member of the Masons there.
Oh,
Uh,
geez.
so two of my paternal aunts, well, three of my paternal aunts, my Aunt Clara, my Aunt Frances, and my Aunt Freddie, and of course, Aunt Clara's daughter, Priscilla Locke, they were all active in the Eastern Star. So they really wanted my parents to get us in, my sister and the Rainbow Girls, and all three of my brothers into the DMLA. They exploited like this great Christian organization that whenever the DeMolays and Rainbow Girls would have conclave and stuff. The DeMolay would meet over in the corner and get down and pray, pray to Jesus. And it was this really, really great Christian organization, which my dad had its doubts because his dad himself and some of his brothers were in the Masons. And I guess he really didn't see much significant difference in a Mason and I guess a drunk or someone, who enjoyed um, um,
See the
you know,
screen, Charles? Is that what
yeah.
you were saying? Demolay like that?
Mhm. Well, the Demolay was named after Jacques Demolay, who was a Knights Templar back during the times of the Spanish Inquisition. He was a martyr against the Catholic, against the Catholic Church.
Oh, excuse me.
Um, I'm trying to remember the name of the king who had declared war against the Knights Templars, and during their persecution, he was martyred, and they started a fraternity after him, which is what we call the junior branch of the Masons. Um, so I was initiated on DeMolay Day in 1980 in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Shriners Temple, and I thought I was joining this Christian organization, and pretty much after joining, I had stepped outside for a few minutes, and a couple of the Masons come out. So I asked them about it being, you know, a Christian oriented um, organization, and they just laughed at me. Said, "Well, if you think you joined a Christian organization, you're going to be in for a surprise because it is not a Christian oriented organization." But the lessons that we learned was pretty moral and based. From what I could tell, the every year we would have what they call conclave. Um, that's where there'd be this huge meeting convention in the state. Back then was in Macon, Georgia, and at the Hilton Rest Motel is where they would have the conventions until 1981. Um, and I'll get to that later. But to me, it was great because the Rainbow Girls would show up and we would have these dances and stuff um, with, these girls our age. And I was always, I always loved dancing anyway. So I'd see how many of them I could get out there and dance with. And, on that aspect, it was really great because it gave, you know, teenagers a place to go and meet. And a lot of times I wound up with, my female pen pals. We would write back and forth. And even down at the Masonic home in Macon, Georgia, I met this one sweet girl down there one time who was orphaned. If I remember correctly, her name was Robin Brown, and we used to write back and forth all the time. And
Hey, Charles, Cash asked you a question.
well, I'm going to admit the prestige of the conclaves and the like I said, meeting girls. I had some of my buddies from school had even joined, and you know, so I
Plus, they put a fake front up because a lot of the members there are members of churches too.
oh yes, you'll meet people in there in the Masons and the Eastern Star who attend church on a regular basis. And I was like, you know, um, okay, whatever. But anyway, it was as far as the aspect of once a year going, having the big convention, and meeting other teenagers, dancing with the young, pretty ladies my age was, it was a good aspect of it. It was like a brotherhood. We were, supposed to look out for one another. Um, um, we were supposed to have this protection of this, of the Masons that would watch us and protect us from, any bad things that came about. And to me, that was ideal because, before that, um, I can't remember if it was just before I joined or right after I joined. Um, it had to be after because remember now, 1981, the picture of
Yes.
Danny Hughes composite sketch had come over one of the local news stations from the murder of 12-year-old Patrick Baltazar. And of course, Danny was the guy who pretty much led the Bentleys to where my family was living at in Morganton, Georgia, to where Jim Stubbs could come up there and locate us and tried to kill me like he did in 1975 when I was 9 years old. So the theme of having this protection of this, fraternity, of bad things happening to me, I guess was really the main motive of staying in the fraternity. Um, because that's what pretty much what they define it as, a fraternity. And um
Here's
in
Daddy
addition,
Hughes right here.
yeah, that's his composite. That's his mug shot from 2015 when he murdered my buddy Terry Owenby. When Danny was the manager at King's Leathercraft, um, which makes me a witness against him for first degree murder, even though he was acquitted of second degree murder um, in 2022 when they finally got it to court. But he's the one that pretty much, um, I guess the Bentleys reached out to the Hughes family up in Murphy, North Carolina. And it was Danny who pretty much led Jim Stubbs to where we were located at. And of course, that was the first attempt on my life was in 1975 when I was 9 years of age, and which resulted in the death of Jim Stubbs. So of course, my
At
dad
that
did.
time, I was still living in Florida.
Mm, well, of course, my dad didn't handle things right because Bill Galloway, the arresting officer of Jim Stubbs in
Okay.
1973. Um, oh gosh. Um, Lost my track there, but
Sorry.
anyway, it was Danny Hughes that um, that led Jim Stubbs there. Um, Bill Galloway was only able to arrest him. He was not able to arrest George nor his son Ed Bentley with it, even though both were involved in trying to get me to engage in this illicit conduct with Jim's 5 and 6-year-old daughter. And so, anyway, um, but when Bill became sheriff, and of course I witnessed that incident with his sister's brick mailbox, and um, which was a homicide being committed by Mike McLaughlin. McLaughlin was still a law student. He did not start his job with the magistrate court until November of 1983, which was the week that I met John Ramsey, and of course Frank Floyd, who was going by Bill Ramsey. I
Oh
was
yeah.
actually able to meet Mike McLaughlin when he brought Frank Floyd over there between Leighton Graphics and Tip Top Poetry to drop him off. So that was going to be I guess, the third attempt on my life. They had promised my brother Fred the $450,000 that I was supposed to receive from the settlement by July the 1st of 1996 to help them get rid of me. Well, Fred wound up joining the fraternity after I did, but after he started associating with Roger Nance, Nance had told him it was a cult and this, that, and the other, and Fred pulled out of the cult, I guess might as well call it, and went and joined the death cult. And Bill Hutson was a member of that death cult, the same death cult that George and his first cousin, Fred Bentley Sr., were members of. And of course, his son, Fred Bentley Jr., and Randall Bentley Sr. are members of. And of course, Alice Summer. That's what it is. It's a death cult.
I think I'm going to share my entire screen so I can show it the pictures easier, when I go to the photos.
Mm-hmm. So, after McLaughlin fled the scene with the driver of the Chevelle, I had no choice but to report to the police what I witnessed and what kind of vehicle it was. So of course, after that occurred, Ed Bentley and my cousin Robert Veach went to the couple who lived on the corner of Knight Road and Ebenezer Road, dressed up in mask and tactical gear, and raided their house looking for me. Well, their children was grown. Their son was married with 2 children. They had a daughter who was still attending Kennesaw State University, and that's how they found out that it was me who went down there to assist in the incident to discover that it was a homicide in progress. Yeah, that is Robert. That is a recent picture of my cousin, deep state serial child murderer, sex trafficker, former Cobb County police officer, and executive of IBM, Robert Veach. whom I'm trying to get his brother Wayne's body exhumed for a new autopsy from being poisoned by what I believe was ethylene glycol.
Yeah, let's get a Wayne, right?
Yes, ma'am. Him and my brother poisoned Wayne back in 2007. And during the invasion of my house in 2013 that I'm not supposed to remember, Robert admitted to me that him and Fred had poisoned Wayne. He said not with ethylene glycol, but something else, which tells me it was ethylene glycol, because you can't get the truth out of these people, even if their life depends on it, because this is the same bunch that John Ramsey and a lot of other people who have been trying to kill me for, around the past 50 years, are all members of, known as the Gridiron Secret Society.
This,
Um,
this is John Ramsey's new wife.
well, bless your heart.
Excuse me, John.
Or I don't know. I might want to say bless his heart. I don't know. Don't know anything. But I know I have the deepest
Oh, y'all, the pollen count's been up really bad here, so I didn't mean to. Sorry.
Yeah. So, Bill, he was in the Masons. His successor, Neil Warren, who became sheriff after him, I believe it was 2003, 2004 is whenever Neil Warren became sheriff, and Bill took his retirement, and he recently passed away this year. No, I've not made one penny from this. I've not made one penny from stopping the terrorist attacks that I stopped. I didn't make any money from getting the death penalty passed for child rape in the state of Georgia, along with Megan's Law. Matter of fact, I forked money out of my pocket for this, cash. And I have spent a lot of money on this, cash. Matter of fact, I've lived in Texas. I've lived in Alabama. I've lived in Florida. I'm trying to avoid these people. And they had it in their mind that I was not going to live to eventually get my story out and expose them. If you want to call it the Jimmy Savile rabbit hole, I mean, it could be, from what we understand about Jimmy Savile, because we're talking people that is also involved in this pedophile and terrorist network with people like Jeff Epstein, other members of the Mossad like Arthur Blank, Bernie Marcus, Ken Lagone, Ron Brill. So we're talking a partnership between Israeli intelligence and the CIA. And Marietta, Georgia, is what we call the black hole of the prison, medical, and military industrial complex, and also the child sex trafficking industrial complex is primarily based there out of Marietta, Georgia. The picture that you're just showed is Randall Bentley Sr., the brother of Fred Bentley Jr., He is also a scumbag lawyer that is deeply involved with this stuff, in addition to the Atlanta child murders, and to my understanding was also involved in other high-profile homicides, including and not limited to the homicides of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, Christopher Byers, known as the West Memphis Three homicides, John Benet Ramsey, and of course, 11-year-old Levi Frady of Cumming, Georgia. These are the same people, masterminds behind the bombing of the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building, in association with Murphy Building Supply, Radio Shack, Home Depot, because Home Depot even attempted to attack its own corporate headquarters on June 19th, 1997. Now, in June of 1998, I wanted to use the law library at the courthouse, and of course, Bill Hutson, he had his rule that only licensed attorneys and judges were privy to use the law library, until I showed up at his office one day demanding to use the law library. And he called me into his office and advised me that the reason that he did not allow the public access to the law library was they did not want career criminals learning the loopholes in the law to where they could beat the system with their crimes. So after I asked him if I was going to get any appreciation or public appreciation for stopping the bomb attacks of the Home Depot corporate headquarters and the July 4th, 1997 attempted attacks of Six Flags and Cumberland Mall, he advised me I was not going to get any support or recognition out of him nor out of Cobb County for my efforts on that. So I decided to threaten him with a lawsuit. He was going to make an exception and allow me to use the law library whenever I wanted to use the law library. And I just told him that's not good enough. I expected to see that law library opened up to the public with signs pointing to it, which he did not like to do that, because then he would have to supply a librarian for the law library, which they do have. But I threatened Bill Hutson with suit against blocking the public access to use that law library. So he did not want to get sued. He did open up the law library in June of 1998, which it remains open today, just in a different location in the newer courthouse that they built about 10, 12 years ago. If it wasn't for that, none of the sheriffs of Cobb County would allow public access to those law books, even though they're legal documents under the Open Records Act, and they were not privately owned. They were paid for by the taxpayers' money. So he had no choice but to open up the law library to the public. So he was protecting the Bentleys. He was in when I confronted his sister Betty Elrod about discussing with him what I witnessed, she told me her advice to me was to forget what I saw and not mention it to anyone else. And to my understanding, she was also a member of the Eastern Star there at the Kennesaw Lodge.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. When you bring up Barnes, it reminds you of that person. But the thing is, yeah, it is a big ring because they're using the Barnes for child trafficking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what Beth Ramsey brought to my attention in October of 1991 when she came to Marietta looking for me. She had, after the birth of John Bonet, um, she was able to sit down and hold John Bonet for the first time. And she said it was like she was sitting there holding herself because Beth reminded her so much of when she was an infant that her heart just melted um, when she held John Bonet. And
There's Beth right here with
yes,
John, her daddy, John Ramsey.
yeah, Beth was a baby doll. I Matt Darrington, he landed him a jewel of a lady. He really did. And it's really she landed the gem knight in shining armor. And of course, they were the ideal couple. They were my favorite couple. Um, if we could have just got them busted, they would have got married. They would have adopted John Bonet after getting Patsy committed to a nut lord.
Right.
Um, and I guess they would have adopted Burke as well. And the picture that you're showing there, that is Ghislaine Maxwell. That picture was taken during Oktoberfest 1996 in Helen, Georgia, while Ghislaine was on a date with a lover, Eric Robert Rudolph.
Yeah. He was talking, he said, why was her body not removed? John Bonet's. But here's John Bonet right here, and they say that this is a fictitious picture. But you said this was really in Oktoberfest in 1996 in Helen, Georgia, right?
That is correct. That is not photoshopped. That is a genuine picture of.
Just
Spoken
saying.
with quite a few people who were aware of it. Knew that whenever that picture was taken, that Ghislaine was on another date with her lover Eric Rudolph. Now, Eric
Yeah,
Rudolph
speaking of
was
Eric
also.
Rudolph, we need to show the people this, okay? Here is how his regular picture is, right? So let's
Yes.
go over here right quick and look at his new identity. This is his new identity, and it should be making everybody mad that he's out. And he's not messing with kids anymore, but he works with he's a nurse practitioner, Eric Neufeld.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondered how his mother and his sister feels about that since his mother disowned him and Daniel back in September of 1999. I mean, the guy didn't even have the decency to look his mother in the eye and tell her the truth over that horrible question that he asked me over there in the Radio Shack. And what do you mean her body not removed? Her body, um,
John did. John did remove the body and take it. And for all the people that's believing that the police had told John to go look for his daughter, that's bullcrap.
yeah, yeah.
They got a new interview out where John is saying that the police told him to go look while the police just stood there and did nothing.
Well, what happened was the police showed up
Hi there.
at a crisis there, and hello, Carrie. Um, there was a lot of guests in the home that night. Um, the house is almost 7,000 square feet. Um, I forgot how many guests had actually stayed there. Some had stayed next door in Fleet White's garage upon their arrival. Um, I guess on the 23rd of December, my brother Fred, Roger Nance, Eric Rudolph, um, a bunch of others stayed in Fleet's garage. Excuse me. And, um, the Ramseys had a number of homes. They had a home in Michigan at that one college that teaches performing arts and music, where Jeff Epstein got took his music lessons when he was a teenager.
Yep.
They they had other homes in Marietta, one in Buckhead, less than 3 miles from John's best friend, John Mark Carr's dad. John Ramsey and John Mark Carr's dad are good friends. Both were involved in the Atlanta child murders together.
Hey, hold on a minute, Chris. Are you talking about we don't now not Burke. Burke did not have was it Burke that did it?
Yeah, if you're thinking John Andrew, you're right in line, because John Andrew was very much responsible for both of his sisters' homicides. That was not an accident up south of Chicago. That was a staged incident. Frank Floyd, my brother Fred, Roger Nance. Um, I think his name is David Jacob B. They go by Larry Roan. Um, Jacob B. brothers would go by the Roan brothers. They were some of the same bunch that were trying to chase me around in lower Alabama and panhandle of Florida from 1994 through 1996, trying to kill me down there.
It's okay.
But yeah, if you're guessing that Burke Ramsey had anything to do with John Benet's murder, it's nothing like that. If anything, we really need to be praying for Burke, because I could only imagine. It doesn't matter how much money that Linwood has won for him. I believe that he is living in a reality prison, and he cannot say a word without word getting back to his brother John Andrew, who would probably be more than happy to do his dad a favor and whack his younger half brother if it would gain more brownie points with
If
his
y'all had
cereal.
listened to Charles, if y'all had listened to Charles's earlier things where he, Charles and Beth Ramsey, which is John's daughter, and Matt Darrington all went and rescued two boys out of the Bentley Farms thing. Okay, Charles had told um, Beth not to tell John Andrew about them going to do this, but he did. She did, to their dismay, because when they rescued them, guess what? They did show up. And when they tried to flee and stuff, the two boys got shot. Then John Ramsey himself threatened Beth, threatened Matt Darrington, threatened that other Paula, which is a friend of all three of
Beth.
them are dead, and they threatened Charles too. But Charles is the only one still living. But that ain't because of their lack of trying.
Yeah, they have
But
they have
it's like
tried.
he had told Beth, um, since Beth had told him that the reason why she did this is because of what she did for what he's been doing sexually. I'm doing this basically to save John Bonet. I'm doing this for John Bonet, okay? So then I'm going to let you say that little thing again on what he had stated, what he was going to do to John Bonet, that the threat. to Beth. Okay.
Yeah, he had, according to Beth and Matt, he started sexually abusing Beth just before she turned 7 years of age, and it carried on until she was almost 9 years of age. So for 2 years, John Ramsey um, was sexually assaulting his oldest daughter until one day or one evening she caught him putting his hand up the dress of her younger sister Melinda, and that is when she went and told her mother Lucy about what had happened with her. And plus, John, he was having extramarital affairs. He had also had an extramarital affair with Nancy Grace, who was a prosecutor with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office.
Whoa.
Or he started having his fling with Patsy, who was the secretary at Access Graphics.
So it was Access Graphics before it was Layton, that other graphics company, or what?
No, Access Graphics never was part of Layton Graphics. Layton
Okay.
Graphics was owned by Mr. Layton. Don't want to mention her name, um, but she graduated Wheeler High School with Roger Nance. She knew Roger from school. Him and my brother Fred had taken trigonometry and graphics and design at both high schools. Wheeler, back at that time, they had the, I can't remember if it's graphics and design was at Walton or if it was trigonometry. But the students from the two schools would commute to the other to take those classes. And Fred, of course, he would drive over to Wheeler from Walton when he went to Walton his senior year in 1982, and him and Roger would commute back and forth with the schools for their classes and stuff, during their senior years. So whenever Mr. Layton found out they both had studied graphics and design, he hired them to work for him at his company. And in early in 1983, John had designed the microchip hardware for the United States government and Lockheed. But in 1984, since the United States government was going to shut down the production of mica in the United States, that's whenever he partnered with Polaroid, General Electric, Motorola, and IBM in designing the computer hardware for the microfilm
And
industry.
then comes Del Montegraph or whatever his name was.
Cash, I'm not worried about proof. I'm going by what I was told by Beth. Okay. Some of the stuff I have proof on, I'm not going to sit here and to go in what proof I have, what proof I do not have. And I hate to be blunt like this. But if you cannot accept that, may you find somewhere else to, take your comments to.
So Beth had told him.
That's right. And also, whenever I met Nancy at this restaurant in Atlanta in 2005, I had asked her if she was one day be interested in interviewing me because I had also had knowledge of those who were involved in the Atlanta child murders. And Nancy Grace told me herself that she was not interested in interviewing me because she had friends who were involved in the Atlanta child murders. So I heard that from the horse's mouth myself.
Wow.
Yes, that was after I got my buddy Richard Jewell reinstated as a deputy for the Habersham County Sheriff's Department after using him for a media fall guy to keep the media's attention away from Murphy, North Carolina.
Yeah, when it's one person's story and he's saying by what somebody had told him and stuff, and what his knowledge is. Well, look at Beth. She knows she's no longer with us. She did lose her life because they did chase her, and they tried to run away and ran into it.
Well, Matt Matt had no problem driving in the rain if he was by himself, but whenever he had his um, girlfriend, fiance, whoever you want to call Beth, whenever he had her with him, it didn't matter if it was on a light rain, they would pull into a restaurant and they would wait for the rain to stop and the roads to dry before they got back on the roads because he always was in fear for their safety because her dad was so unpredictable that he just never would or could put anything past John, and neither could she. Um, after John Bonet was born, Beth started coming around more frequently and even would assist Patsy and um, feeding John Bonet and taking care of her every opportunity that she did. John even got her a job at Delta Airlines since she was an experienced cocktail waitress. So she was a stewardess that served the alcoholic beverages on the flights. And so it was optional to her to either fly back to Chicago and go home, or she could get off at the back then Andrew Jackson Airport, which is now Hartsfield Jackson, and either have a friend to come pick her up or take a taxi and go to her dad's house and, you know, visit with her stepmother and half brother and help take care of John Bonet.
Yeah,
But
like
Matt never would drive in the rain, um, even if it was projected for 3 4 hour rain. They would just go get a motel room and just wait it out until the roads would dry. It didn't matter how much it cost for a motel room. He would not drive on the rainy roads and wet roads. Um,
but she was removed from the basement, was she not? I thought John removed her from the basement and took her to the living room, sat her down, and covered her up with something, and so that tainted the.
Actually, she was not removed from the room that John claimed to remove her from because Fleet White said he went into that room and did not see her. There was a special space that John had prepared um, up under the stairway in the basement to preserve her body for rigor mortis to make it appear that she was murdered um, at a later time than when she was murdered. She was murdered, to my understanding, around between 7:45 and 7:50 p.m. on Christmas evening. So whenever John brought her home at 9 o'clock, she was not asleep. She was dead. And that fulfilled his vow to Beth about how he would have her murdered in order to get Beth back.
On the anniversary of the
Jill
him had killing,
Robinson.
he had killed Jill Robinson because he confessed to you that he did that he killed Jill
Yeah,
Robinson.
that was the second time I heard it out of his mouth that he had murdered Jill Robinson, because when I had met him over at Leighton Graphics, 3 evenings for my 18th birthday in 1983, I got to sit him boast and brag and laugh with my brother and Nance and the other technicians of Leighton Graphic about these children that he had murdered, other than victims of the Atlanta child murders.
And what's weird
And
about that was what's so weird about that. He kept her a couple of days before he killed her.
mhm. Well, when you want to find the fingerprint of John Ramsey in this bunch, you always have to look at the similarities of the homicides. Um, the children were normally fed, were well bathed, and well taken care of before they were murdered. And so that would remove any type of forensic evidence before they murder them. Jill Robinson, he just chose to shoot Jill in the face with a shotgun. When I heard him tell that account to my brother Fred and Roger Nance, they just busted out laughing like the other two technicians of Leighton Graphics did, like that was the funniest thing they ever heard in their life. And I
Dickman.
couldn't believe I couldn't believe what I was seeing and hearing out of the conduct of my brother, because we were raised a whole lot better than that. That's for sure. On the bottom left is Jill Robinson.
Right here. It's sick and twisted how they laugh about it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Second case in 2 weeks.
This is Christine McMillan. Trying to think of that other boy's name, but there was Timothy King.
Yeah, there's Timothy.
And their plot in the Oakland County child murders was to pin it on the Black Panthers in Detroit, but Timothy King was seen meeting with Doug McRae and Sam Duncan Sr.
This is Jill
Just
Robinson,
before his,
Chris Melheck, it's Timothy King, Mark Stubbins.
yeah, Mark Scabbins, yeah. Well, Doug McRae even admitted it 1996 and 1997 that Sam Duncan Sr. was involved with him, Frank Sheldon, because Doug was really, really good friends with Frank Sheldon.
How is Ray Duncan related to Sam Duncan?
They were brothers. You had three brothers: John, Ray, and Sam.
Okay, because I found a picture of Ray.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had to get that off of there.
Well, and if I remember correctly, it was April of 1997. I went to the Waffle King in Murphy to get a cup of coffee around, I think it was around 5:30. I decided to pull in, take a break, and have some coffee. and I didn't even have a chance to pull in. Some boys pulled up in a 86 or 87 Ford Ranger and told me that Steve Duncan, which was Sam Duncan Jr., said if I did not show up at his house to fight him, that I would not live to see sundown.
This is Doug McRae, everybody, that he was mentioning, Doug McRae.
Yeah, that's. I wish I had a picture of Matt McRae because you can see the great similarities of his nephew, Matt McRae Sr., and him. Just about think that he was his daddy more than his brother Merle, which I never seen his brother Merle.
This is Ray Duncan right here.
Yes, ma'am. Raymond Toomey Duncan, the founder of Duncan Oil. Um, Duncan Oil is based in two places, in Boulder, Colorado, and Murphy, North Carolina.
Wow.
By which his brother Sam Duncan Sr. really runs Duncan Oil. Tim Duncan, his son, he has four sons, pretty much does everything that his Uncle Sam instructed him to do because David runs the vintages in Oakville, California, Napa Valley, California, where they make the wine. And David has expressed his disgust and both his dad and his uncle's involvement in this. That's one thing I could say about even like John Ramsey, even Ray Duncan. As bad as a cat as he was, actually, raised some sons that really didn't like all the shenanigans that this bunch is involved in, including Tim, who pretty much operated under duress out of fear for his safety as well. Because these people, they don't stop at anything. They would kill their own mother, like they tried to kill my mother. My brother and my cousin Robert Beach were very much involved in the plot to murder my mother. And I was able to stop that on June 19th of 2000. And so if these type of people, the type to kill their own parents and their own offspring or siblings, you just cannot put anything past them. Now up at the top right is Sheriff Craig Owens. He is the first black sheriff of Cobb County. He's earned his reputation last year as the Burger King sheriff because he went to a Burger King in Austell and ordered him a Whopper with extra mayo and cut in half. And he did not get what he wanted in a burger. So he dispatched or had two deputies dispatched to his location.
Y'all see why I'm laughing, okay?
Yeah, so they showed up and they come blue lights to go in to show up where he was at to find out that his panties was tied in a knot over his Whopper not being prepared right and cut in half so he could share it with somebody else because he's too cheap to buy two Whoppers. I mean, that's the way I perceive it.
Yeah. It's trying to get up a better picture so everybody can see the Craig Owens,
Mm-hmm. Now, I saw you pull up Big Bird and Craig Manier a while ago.
Uh,
And we'll go into that on the June 19th of 1997 attempted truck bombing of the Home Depot corporate headquarters at its original location.
gotta get it back. I'm sorry. Get it back up here.
Mm-hmm. But I like to have a little bit of fun with this time to time. Um, my
I can
first
see the resemblance there with a big head like that and a big head and long neck.
well, the hair and the
Yeah,
feathers. I always thought that that was kind of cute the way Craig Manier styles his hair, and of course it looks like the feathers on Big Bird's head. But the even though that Craig did not go to work for the Home Depot Corporation until, according to him, around September the 19th of 1997, he was in fact in the retail location there, which was located across the road from the original corporate headquarters. Um,
although when they was getting ready to have it exploded.
yes, ma'am. This was around 10 minutes before arrival of the truck bomb. And let's bear in mind, everybody, the people that I'm mentioning who are not deceased, or these are my accusations, these are my accounts, these people are innocent until, or presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. I meant to say this in the beginning of the video, so I'm going to say it now. These are my accusations, and I stand behind them. And I have quite a bit of proof about this. But that was another one of the terrorist attacks that I was operated solo on stopping. I had help in some of the others, out of colleagues in both Murphy, North Carolina, and in Atlanta, Georgia. But I did not have any help out of anyone except for a cashier at the Home Depot store location there at Cumberland Boulevard and West Paces Ferry Road. That was my first encounter with Craig Manier. My second encounter with Craig Manier did not occur until around July the 7th of 2001,
Right.
when my dad was on his deathbed at the ICU unit in Piedmont Hospital. And I didn't think my brother Fred would stoop down to the level of getting rid of me while our daddy was dying in the ICU.
Right.
Well, I was wrong again. After my sister showed up to relieve us from sitting with him, even though there was coffee there at the hospital we could get for free, he asked me if I would ride down the street to this cafeteria to have a cup of coffee with him down there. And it was another abduction and attempt on my life, which I successfully success. But that was my second encounter with Craig Manier.
Right.
Now, in September of 1999, you might want to pull up Thomas Albert Samples picture. Albert Samples.
Okay. Share the screen right quick. Yes, I had this picture and then I just closed it back out. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Now, there's a unique story about Albert, because even though Albert's from Cumming, Georgia.
This one right here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Albert used to come up to Murphy, North Carolina quite a bit, and he would go up to Topton and hang out with the Rudolph brothers, Jamie, Joe, Eric, and of course Daniel. Well, Jamie Rudolph is a homosexual. So Albert would go up there and get drunk and do drugs and all that. Well, Jamie would put pills in his drink to knock him out. And then after he knocked him out, well, he would sexually assault him. But it didn't stop Albert from going back up there and hanging out with the Rudolph brothers.
Right.
As a matter of fact, since Eric Rudolph and his brother Daniel were in Hanging Dog, this community north of Murphy, North Carolina, the night of the Centennial Park attack. Since Eric was listed as the perpetrator of the Centennial Park attack, which was carried out by cousins Mike Cook and Bobby Cook, explosives were built by Eric Rudolph and Daniel Rudolph. Once he became wanted by the FBI, Daniel decided to cut off his wrist with a mounted box saw and video record it and send a copy of the tape to Louis Free, the FBI.
Wow.
And of course, he was rushed over to the hospital in Andrews and it was surgically reattached. Well, Albert went up there and he comforted Daniel during the recovery of the surgery on his hand after having it reattached. So there was apparently some type of intimacy between Daniel Rudolph and Albert Samples. Well, in September of 1999, of course, after the Spunch lost their death wager against me, I had my confrontations with Eric Rudolph and actually got to have a meeting, with his mother and his sister. And I just want to say that they were, if Pat Murphy had not succeeded at anything, one thing that she did succeed in was raising a very, very vibrant and very high moral daughter who I still consider very much a lady. For what?
Too bad the boys were bad, though, huh?
Yeah, the boys didn't turn out to be the best in the world, but one thing I could say about Pat Murphy, which, Pat, by the advice of her friend Tom Flanagan, moved her family up there after the death of her husband Robert from cancer to get them out of Florida, so they would not wind up in the life of crime. And she got them up there, and they wound up, at least Eric, and Eric wound up in the death cult. Eric was also John Benet Ramsey's water skiing instructor during the summer of 1996 because John and Patsy had a house located on Lake Chattooga on the Georgia side of the lake. It's a lake that borders both states, North Carolina, Aceville, North Carolina, and Hiawassee, Georgia.
Didn't you say that's the lake where they basically had a lot of the girls that they ended up messing with, and then another lake where they had the
Yeah,
boys they messed with?
the boys that they would take out and sexually assault would be on Lake Hiawassee and just west of Murphy, North Carolina, in a community called Hiawassee Dam.
Uh-huh.
And from what I got out of Doug McRae and Eric Rudolph in 1997 was I don't know if it was all the victims of the West Memphis 3 homicides, all 3 Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, and Levi Frady. But they were all taken on this camping trip there. And that's where the sexual assaults occurred. That's why Levi Frady was terrified of his dad. They tried to set me up for the attack on the Centennial Park once I got to Murphy on the 23rd of July of 96. They decided to postpone it from the 25th to the 27th on my daughter's birthday. after they failed to set me up for the attack with a fake attack of Mike Cook's first wife, Rhonda, on September the 11th, 1996. Um, they even went as far to try to convince people in Murphy, North Carolina that they had seen me in Boulder, Colorado on Christmas Eve, 1996, standing outside of a bar smoking a cigarette. And I've never been to Colorado, much less Boulder. The furthest west that I ever been is Texas. I went up to Missouri on a weekend trip one time, and those are the only two states west of the Mississippi, and of course the states in between here and there,
People's
Alabama,
got to
Louisiana.
people's got to realize a lot of times that they say, okay, the Ramsey supposedly lived in Colorado at the time, but they don't realize that they had other houses in other states like Michigan and places like
Well,
that as well.
well, that's of course because you always hear John talk about this person or this person that lived in Boulder. You never hear him talk about any of their colleagues in Marietta, like Bill Hutson, Judge McLaughlin, Roger Nance, my brother Fred, Robert Veach, or Ed Bentley, or George Bentley, or Fred Bentley Sr., Fred Bentley Jr., Randall Bentley Sr. You never hear John Ramsey bringing up any of his colleagues from Atlanta as being involved. It's always somebody out there, Access Graphics. Well, Access Graphics was located, believe it or not, off of Buford Highway in Doraville, Georgia. When he first started Access Graphics, only after he married Patsy did they purchase the home in Boulder. And I don't know what year that they moved the operation from Doraville, Georgia to Boulder, Colorado. But I know on March 11th, 1997, I was held hostage with 3 employees of the Rent-A-Center. They're just south of Interstate 285 on Buford Highway, by
Oh,
Eric Rudolph, Matt McRae of Radio Shack, and of course Fred Cook, the youngest brother of Mike Cook and sons of Francis Cook, owners of Murphy Build Supply, Cook's Carpet and Flooring in Murphy and Waynesville, North Carolina. They're the ones who had possession of the 263-pound hydrogen bomb that I had to provide what was supposed to be the maximum of a 25-year run in exchange for the surrender of that hydrogen bomb. That's why I had to go into secrecy for all these years, was to get that hydrogen bomb disarmed and surrendered to the ATF the night of January 28, 1998. And that was the night that truck bomb number 14 was en route to Mobile, Alabama, when they tried to attack the FBI field office down there 19 minutes after Joey Davis attacked a new women's healthcare clinic there in Birmingham
I want
while
people
driving
to
their
know
Rudolph's pickup truck.
the reason why we call him AKA the Franklin Delano Floyd, he's known as Bill Ramsey. That's because when Charles had met John, he introduced Franklin Floyd as Bill Ramsey.
Yeah, that's who Mike McLaughlin brought over there that evening and dropped off with us. And we walked over to Tip Top Poetry and got to sit there and listen to those two talk about their roles and my cousin Robert Veach's roles in the Alphabet murders. One of the victims, I had mistaken it originally as being Carmen Colon, but I think it must have been the last victim of the alphabet murders is whenever John met Frank Floyd. Floyd was in the process of abducting one of the victims when he pulled up and saw him having a hard time with her. So he jumped out and went to assist Floyd, and Floyd mistook him as a
Hi there,
good Samaritan with the
Taylor.
hello Taylor, and Floyd pulled his knife and tried to stab him, and he jumped back. So, whoa, 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 man, don't stab me. I'm not here to help her. I'm here to help you. She's about to get away. Let's get her. So he helped Floyd throw her in the back of his blue van, and they claimed that they did not target these girls, that they were all picked at random, and that their initials of the first and the last names was just a coincidence, and they were just totally intrigued how they had been dubbed the alphabet murders. But of course, Floyd would go on with Ramsey and Sheldon and was involved in the Oakland County child murders, of course, the Atlanta child murders. And of course, we know from, Doug McGray that they were involved in the Boys Farm child pornography ring over there in Winchester, Tennessee.
Yeah, they didn't like me doing that story here at YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of shut it down. They hated me sharing that information for some reason.
Well, yeah, by the time you look at how they set that up with Claudius Vermillion, he only had to serve about seven, maybe 8 years in prison before they were able to get him out to where he could go back and, in their minds, live a normal life. There's no telling how many more children he sexually abused after he was released from prison. We know we look at these, a lot of these unsolved homicides of little boys, little girls. These people do not discriminate against either one. Some parents will give their children over. Some will sell them, and they'll just go out and outright abduct them.
Yeah,
Without
and I was shocked. I was
parents.
shocked that time after Patsy had died to find out after the fact that John Ramsey had a place with Natalie Holloway's mother somewhere here in Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and people
How
look at
many
me
of that kids that were missing and abducted? You think about that, and you're thinking, okay, some of this time frame that he was, even if he's not living here in that area, like Doug McRae lives in North Carolina, and yet he was there in Alabama, and it was there in Georgia, so they move around a lot.
oh, they do. And a lot of people look at me funny when I tell them that I was in Miraflores there in Lima, Peru, the night that Beer Vandersloot um, wound up with Stephanie Flores and murdered her there in Peru. I was actually in Peru that night and just 2 blocks from that casino there in Miraflores.
Wow.
So I mean that was intriguing when I saw on the news stations down there that he was in Peru. I mean, if I could have just been over there, I believe if I ran across him in public, we would have been in a fight, um, in a drop of a hat. But one of the guys that was killed in self-defense with Frank Sheldon and Andrea Strassmeyer around the 23rd of September 1999 was Dave Holloway at the CIA. And they had determined that they were going to come over there near Andrews, North Carolina, and kill me. And Dave Holloway and Andrea Strassmeyer's remains are buried in Elohim City, even though Frank Sheldon faked his death on July the 9th, 1996, in New Amsterdam during his flight and their flight after the Oklahoma City bombing. He, I gave him the nickname the Zombie. I had some people in Western North Carolina get a little upset about that because they kind of would throw the wisecrack. Well, how do you write a report on executing a dead man? Because he had already faked his death in 1996, but yet he is buried in Cherokee County, North Carolina.
Yeah, let's see I can't read French or whatever language that is when I look up this handwriting here. See, I'm going to type it. Let me make it bigger for people to see.
Mm-hmm.
It looks German.
Yeah.
Netherlands.
Well, he might have did what Elvis Presley did, sign his own death certificate. I mean,
yeah. So this is it right here. See, I can't read Netherlands language.
I can't either, and I have German ancestry on my mother's paternal side of the family.
Yes, I have German in my ancestry as well. I think. Because I really don't know who I am, right?
Yeah, it's but between Bill Hutson and Neil Warren, I did go up and I did petition to join the Masonic Lodge in Smyrna, Georgia, now Masonic Lodge, and did make it up until the fellowcraft degree until I found out. Went over to the Kennesaw Lodge one night and saw some of the guys in there that had been involved chasing me around Blackjack Mountain and Bentley Farm 3 nights before my 18th birthday.
Right.
And that's whenever I saw what Lynn Wood's frustration with me was. He knew that I had this thing for the Masons about wanting to, get back into it and all that. But once I found that out, I was like, good grief, it's bad enough sitting there listening to this bunch and my older brother and even Eric Kiss have passed me up, back me up on this. How they
Is he around right now?
He's lurking around here somewhere. I could probably get him in. But they, he was told the same thing that I was told, that they was going to kill the Masons. They were just going to kill them all off, And that was another reason why I decided to go and rejoin the fraternity. Just, just to see if that was really the case, And what I concluded was people like, Bill Hutson, Neil Warren, any of them tied in with the Bentleys, Ed Bentley, Fred Bentley and all them. They were going to sell out their Masonic brethren and they were going to kill them. Those with only up to the 3rd degree, they were going to kill them all. They attempted to attack the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge on December the 9th, 1997 with a truck bomb. My buddy Sam Evans helped assist me in stopping that attack. They're asking about you over here.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. But
Hi, Eric. How you doing?
Hey, Darlene. I'm doing fine.
Yeah, a lot of people try to dismiss and don't really think that a lot of what he's saying is valid, and you can validate it as well. The things about these, some of these people, I know some of them that you know of, you know.
I sure can validate it. Absolutely. From the truck bombs down there in Dorable, back when I was hauling fuel, uh,
Yes.
in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially around 9/11. And then where we got hemmed up there in Forsyth County at gunpoint and had guns to our head, and Charles was pleading for my life as I was pleading for his and trying to regain the situation, control the
How long
situation.
ago was that one?
that was 2 days after my birthday in 1997.
Wow.
Eric Rudolph had a gun to the back of my head, and Jeff Cook of Murphy Build Supply had a 38 to the back of his head, and they were about to execute us. We were lowered over there by my brother Fred and Roger Nance.
What do you think got them to where they got it go ahead and get shot?
I didn't hear.
One more time.
What do you think saved y'all from being shot
Well,
in that?
more or less me pleading for his life. The others had mistaken him as an undercover officer or law enforcement,
Right?
and he was a commercial truck driver. My brother Fred and Roger, they should have known better, but they still lured us over there.
They lied.
Yeah. Would you explain to them the main reason why they lured us
The
over
main
there?
reason they lured us over there is because of the fact that Charlie didn't go and try and deliver a vacuum cleaner to a fictitious address in the same neighborhood as Levi Frady was, so
Yeah,
that
so
they
they
could try to
couldn't.
hang the murder on him for the murder of Levi Frady. So his
Yes.
vehicle could be seen in that neighborhood.
Yeah, they
Yet
were
they
going.
saw a vehicle that was similar to his, but there still was no way they could pin it. You know, he was nowhere near there.
No, that was actually the branch manager of the Electrolux branch in Gainesville, Georgia, Jim Vickers. The fake lead had been given to me by my branch manager, Charlie Bettis and Murphy. And I was told, regardless of the fact that I already had 2 appointments set, which I did that day, sell 3 machines in Gilmer County. They're about close to Ellijay. That if I didn't, even if I sold machines in Ellijay and did not go to Cumming that day to run that supposed delivery, that I would be fired from a part-time job there at Electrolux, which I didn't do. I forwarded the lead over to the Gainesville office, and Jim Vickers, he had I think it was a 1995 or 1996 Dodge Caravan. I had a 1994 Plymouth Voyager, both similar body styles, both similar in color. Now, Jim's was a lighter gray, mine was a charcoal gray, but still was enough that Doug McRae thought that it was my van pulling onto the street, so he gave the signal to Craig Manier and Milton Frady and Danny Hughes that I was in the neighborhood. So they went ahead and carried through with the abduction of Levi.
Poor Levi.
Mm-hmm.
And even the mother and everything, they should have been held accountable as well because they moved the bicycle. They messed with the evidence.
Well, Milton told Lacey, Levi's twin sister, this is why I was wanting to get into Albert Samples there, was Albert, okay, after Jamie Rudolph met some guy, Tim from Marble, and they became boyfriends. They moved to Manhattan, I think in 1995 or something like that. Well, that left Albert available for Marshall Talent, who at the time had a girlfriend. The Talents on this junkyard, Incoming, Georgia. Jamie and Marshall Talent were pretty rough characters back in the day. And even though Marshall had a girlfriend, he wound up having his fling with Albert Samples.
Wow.
So you had two brothers, Jamie and Daniel Rudolph, having their thing with Albert. Then Marshall Talent eventually broke it off with his girlfriend, and Marshall and Albert became, permanent boyfriends. And in
Oh boy.
2000, I think it was 2015, they got into an argument one night in a drunken rage over the rifle that was used to murder Levi. And Albert tried to stab his boyfriend Marshall to death. And of course, Albert's still in prison in the Georgia Department of Corrections for the attempted murder of his boyfriend.
Attempted
But
murder, and how
Albert,
long ago was that? And he's still in there just for attempted murder. And look how many people have been murdering and raping our kids and everything, and they just get a slap on the wrist and get out.
mhm. Well, he was there after Milton and them abducted Levi. They took Levi to the McDonald's and got his favorite last meal. Sound familiar?
Oh
Quarter
yeah,
pounder, um,
like
French
John
fries,
Bonet had a
soda.
pineapple, right?
hmm Took him over to Marshall Talents, dropped him off. Um, Marshall had his time with him before my brother Fred and Roger Nance and Rudolph arrived. Matt McRae, who were drinking and smoking marijuana and trying to get Levi to smoke it with them, and Levi wouldn't smoke it. Albert came in and witnessed how they were treating Levi and abusing him and all that. Said he left again. He said he came back later when some more had arrived, and it was terrible about how they treated Levi.
Right.
Um, Albert actually set up a meeting with Levi's mother, Marilyn Parkman, and around the 25th of September of 1999. And I still wonder this day how I was able to get out of that woman's house without killing her, because they tried to set me up, for the Centennial Park attack and her son's homicide.
I think it's
But
so funny, so much, um, so hilarious when they try to say that you were right there and you tried to cut that lady's legs and stuff at one time, and yet it's like, okay, they seen um, your tag and everything, and said, "Boy, far eyesight," because I was way over here and it's far away, from where this happened.
well, they come to find out the hard way. If I was going to attack a woman with a knife, all right, I really wouldn't have to have a knife. Really attack a dude. If I'd attacked Rhonda Cook with a knife, she would not have lived to talk about it. Um, when I showed up over there at Steve Duncan's house, those boys told me I couldn't take my van, I had to ride with them. And the scope of the rules was when we fought, if I lost, they were going to kill me. All right. But if I beat Steve up in a fight, would be fine. But if I killed him, they were still going to kill me.
Danged if you
So
do, danged if you don't, huh?
yeah, so I wasn't going to live to see sundown. Let's remember, if I didn't go over there and fight Sam Duncan Jr. So I go over there and fight the guy, and I almost killed him. I broke his jaw and shattered his left cheekbone and put him in the ICU for 5 days. They didn't think he was going to live. And of course, I got word that if he died, they were still going to have me killed. So I went over there to the hospital and I talked to Sam and convinced Sam to allow me to go in and sit with his son and pray for his recovery, because I didn't think he would make it if I didn't go in there and sit with him and pray for him. So Sam permitted me, under the condition that when he came conscious and told me to leave, I would not say anything and I would leave. And that's exactly what I did when Steve came to. He saw me sitting over there to his right side, told me he didn't want me there. I didn't say a word. I got up and started to leave until the nurse told me. She goes, Charles, he's changed his mind. He wants you to come over and sit down and talk to him. And so wound up telling some biblical stories. I went out to my van and got my Bible and went in there and told him the story about Elijah the Tishbite and the challenge of the priest of Baal. And I forgot what other stories we got to. Then he wanted me to read him, scriptures, out of the New Testament. And he adopted this one verse that I read to him as his favorite verse. And on his obituary, he died from COVID-19, I think in 2020. And that is on his obituary, that verse that I read to him out of the Bible. Regardless to say, when he recovered, we were about buddies at that point. And it also caused me to kind of be like buddies with Tim and David Duncan, as well as cousins. And of course, Tim and David were in the back of the van. It was a 1996 Ford Econoline custom van. And Tim and David Duncan was in there when Eric and I was lured out there, and they even voted against us being executed. So that's how we survived that. About 2 months after that, I was in Helen, Georgia, and I went in an establishment to drink some beer. And of course, Mike Cook and some of the bunch was in there. And they had told some of the guys that I was standing over talking with that I was an informant for the FBI. And of course, that wasn't the case. But even if I was, I would have been justified. I was drafted and assigned the case on November the 30th, 1996 by Louis Free. So that's how I became the top agent official over the Oklahoma City and Centennial Park attacks.
One thing that just hit me again. Well, Dunkin' Oil is a chemical company, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much of the Dow Chemical people also could be, but I'm not saying, but anyway, that's where my daddy worked, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of find that ironic, you know what I'm saying?
Well, the old man that owned the chemical company over there in Copper Hill, Tennessee, his grandson was involved in that, and he wasn't. I cannot remember his name. I had some problems out of his grandson and was about to confront his grandson. He requested a meeting, and I went over there and met with him, a fine, distinguished gentleman, and told me he was not supportive of any of that stuff. and asked me not to do anything to his grandson because he knew once I got hold of his grandson, he would wind up like so many of the others. If he made his way out of the ICU, it would be a miracle. I had my picture put on the wall at the White County Sheriff's Department almost 2 months after the ordeal with Steve Duncan.
And that's in what county, Georgia?
Yes, ma'am. That's the county seat. Cleveland is the county seat where Helen is located at, where
The
Oktoberfest is held every
Oktoberfest.
year. Um, so that was about the only place to really go without going to the bar at the Brasstown Valley Golf Club where Eric Rudolph worked at for Zell Miller and his wife Shirley Carver, who Zell was governor of the state of Georgia at the time. This is where you find out the friendship between the Cooks, Eric Rudolph, and Hunter Biden.
I think it's kind of. I did go ahead and find a picture of them too.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, I wound up in two separate altercations. The first altercation was this big old cornbread fed hillbilly boy.
Zell Miller right there.
Yeah. And after it was over with, the bouncers had to call an ambulance for him to escort him to Cleveland to the hospital. I went into this other
Shirley Carver.
establishment. I went into this other establishment, and three guys tried to jump me, and of course, I put two more of them in the hospital there in Cleveland, Georgia. So,
And this is also, look at Rosalind Carter standing here with
John
John
Wayne
Wayne
Gacy.
Gacy.
Yeah. Now, according to Doug McRae, he was the one who actually killed that one victim and buried him while John Wayne Gacy was out of town. You know, and of course, according to them, they were also involved with Jeffrey Dahmer. But I
Oh
know
man.
for a fact that they were involved with Rex Harriman was because after I had the, I hated to do it, but it was really for the safety of Pat Murphy and Mara Rudolph that I had to pretty much kick them out of the state of North Carolina there in September of 1999. As much as I hated to do it. But Daniel Rudolph went and moved in with Rex Harriman's brother out in South Carolina. The reason why I know Rex was affiliated with them was back on June 19th, 1982. The night I had to go down to the Chattahoochee River and demand the safe return of my brother Fred and Roger Nance, was I met Rex Harriman there at Guy Zach's house off of Pirates Ferry Road in Marietta. And Rex was in town. My second encounter with Rex was in 1999. After my confrontation with Eric Rudolph, they had some old boy they wanted to fight me over in Nantahala Valley or Nantahala Gorge. And of course, my brother Fred and Roger, a whole bunch of people were there, want me to see me fight this guy. And after I knocked him out, well, I had to leave with my brother. He wanted me to go somewhere. Everybody couldn't believe I got in a pickup truck with him and left with him. We rode back over to Andrews, over close to the airstrip. and out there was a bunch of them, and Rex Harriman was out there that day, and they were making fun of me about my stance against children, wanting to protect children and, trying to battle, you know, child abuse and child sex trafficking, that was my brother's purpose to drive me over there to Andrews. And of course, I had to get my own ride back to my vehicle. But Rex Harriman was there in Andrews that day. Um,
Oh, wow.
so now they're finding out there's more bodies and victims of Rexes in Florida. Well, they're going to find out right on up all along the east coast of the United States. There are no telling how many women and children between Judge McLaughlin, Bill Hutson, Roger Nance, Frank Floyd, John Ramsey, Randall Bentley, Ed Bentley, Fred Bentley Jr., um, of course, Eric Rudolph, Doug McRae. I mean, I just keep going with the list. Have murdered. Um, you, we covered the topic of where they murdered 18-year-old Jennifer Lynn Olson, who graduated from Lassiter High School in 1989, because Jennifer just had in her mind that one of these days we were going to get together and she was going to be, my wife and the mother of my children.
Yeah.
She had had a crush on me since she was 16 years old and had waited until she graduated high school, and I was dating her best friend. They worked together at the Burger King there at Sprayberry Crossing, and she was hell bent on being my woman and becoming my wife and the mother of my children. That they went to Hilton Head, South Carolina, and murdered her during her family's yearly vacation there.
Wow.
And Judge McLaughlin, my cousin Robert Veach, my brother Fred, Roger Nance, and some other guys was involved in her murder. I'm assuming Rex Harriman possibly would have been involved in that as well, but I know that my cousin Robert was involved. Judge McLaughlin was involved. My girlfriend and I, we weren't even allowed to go attend her funeral because her parents knew my brother was involved in her murder. So we didn't even get to go attend her funeral. And that was really like a knife in the back, because
Yeah.
even though we weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, we were good friends.
Right.
And it did lead to the split up between my girlfriend and me once that happened. It did break our relationship apart. And
Yeah, because she's afraid that they'll end up doing that to her.
yeah, they had determined that I was not going to have any heirs to my dad's estate, and that my brother Fred was going to get that $450,000 that I was supposed to get in 1996. That he was going to get that, so I wasn't going to get. I wasn't to have any heirs to my dad's estate. So they had determined that they were going to kill me. And they have, you could take it to the bank. They have tried.
Oh, yeah.
After Epstein was picked up in 2006, I went into this establishment down off of Acres Mill Road. They're close to the Pirates Ferry Exchange. And this place was very, very busy, very packed out. It was like 5 o'clock in the early afternoon, or early evening, late afternoon. And 4 of them decided that they were going to jump on me, and I knocked every doggone one of them out. Of course, Atlanta PD got called out, and of course, Atlanta PD knew who I was because they had helped me stop a lot of attacks like the Fox Theater on Valentine's Day, 1997. the truck bomb attempt of the General Motors assembly plant for Lakewood Parkway in Atlanta, underground Atlanta, which was attempted tonight. They hit the other side lounge. I think it was February 22nd, 1997. So Atlanta Police Department was really more like an allied, like one of my protectors and allies. And eventually, after 2001, after those attempts on my life, even members of the Dixie Mob became my allies. Once they found out that these people had been trying to kill me ever since I was 9 years of age, and I had 3 attempts on my life before, and another attempt on my life on my 18th birthday. How they went down to Alabama, tried to kill me down there, and how they tried to set me up, in the Centennial Park attack, the murder of Levi Frady. I started
Right.
getting support out of people, even in organized crime, because nobody likes a snitch. And that's what they were telling everybody. They was like, oh gosh, he went and stole $3,500 worth of stuff from this guy and turned around and got him busted by the police for marijuana, and he's sitting in jail. So we want to follow him back to where he stashed the stolen goods at, and get it back and sell it, and maybe get our buddy out of jail on bond.
Yeah.
Just, stuff like that, and that's, and that wasn't the beginning. I mean, even my brother, who knew better, that I was in the tub with Marissa Stubbs when I was 6 years old. I was not put in that tub with her 2 brothers. It was just her, but he was telling people, oh, he was put in the tub with all 3 children, and they were doing all these things to him, and this, that, and the other. By the time I was 14, I was an informant. By the time I was 15, I was a homosexual. I mean, just the stuff that these people will go out and do to smear you. And your reputation is just unimaginable.
Yeah, and it's them that's the ones that's bad and doing all these things, and yet they wanted to keep trying to get you and trying to destroy you.
Well, yeah, but what they were doing to those 2 boys down there at the Chattahoochee River that night, okay, they were raping those boys. Ted Turner, Ron Brill, I saw them. Fred Bentley Jr., I saw them. I couldn't see my cousin Robert and Ed Bentley, but I heard Robert say, Charles, what do you think you're doing down here? And I'm like, Robert? And that's how I found out my cousin was involved. And of course, Ed sat there and told me I wasn't going anywhere. So I bluffed them. I told them there was a group of people up there waiting on me. If I didn't get back up there, it could cause a problem. And Ed still told me that didn't matter. I said, well, if you're going to stop me, you're going to have to shoot me in the back.
Yeah.
I was 16 years old. But one thing I did that night that was more impressive to Ron Brill than stopping the June 19th, 1997 truck bombing of the Home Depot corporate headquarters was walking down there exactly, I guess 15 years earlier, 1982 to 1997, and the exact dates I went into that store location, and I stopped the truck bombing of their corporate headquarters. He found it more impressive that I went down there to the Chattahoochee River that night at 16 years of age and demanded for the safe return of my brother.
And bluff them for your own safety and your life, and you got away from there.
Yeah. everybody there had to be 100 people down there, and they couldn't believe that I went down there as bold as I did, talking the way that I did, that I only had a buddy of mine who was also in the DMLA sitting in his vehicle up the road instead of a group of people. And I bluffed my way out of there the way I did, as bold as I acted at 16 years of age. I met Ron Brill around 2 weeks after I stopped the truck bomb of the Home Depot corporate headquarters. So I went to Cumberland Mall and had lunch in the food court and had stepped outside to enjoy my after meal cigarette. And he was there. I didn't recognize him because he had thinned. He had a mustache. He didn't look like he did that night 15, in 1982. He become Pillsbury Doughboy comparison to what he was in 1997 and more so today. But he come out there. He walked up to me. He goes, "Hey, aren't you Charles Rogers?" And I was like, "Well, yeah. How do you know me?" "Oh, I'm real good friends with your cousin Robert Veach." And I was like, "Really? What, did you used to work on the police department with Robert?" "Oh, no, no, no. I remember Robert when he worked on the police department, but we really became good friends when he went to work for IBM when he started out working in security. Matter of fact, I know your brother Fred and Roger Nance too." And I was like, "Really?"
He's telling on himself there, isn't he?
Yeah. And I was like, "Well, what kind of work do you do?" "Well, I'm the executive of marketing for the Home Depot Corporation."
Oh,
And I was
joy.
like,
Wow.
"Really?" I was like, "Well, how did you like the way I stopped the truck bombing of your corporate headquarters here a couple of weeks ago?" He goes, "That was nice, but that's not nothing near as impressive as I was back in 1982 when you went down there into the Chattahoochee River and demanded the safe return of your brother Fred and Roger." He goes, "There's people that still talk about that." "How old were you? What, 15, 16, 17?" I said, "I was 16. 16 years old. And the way you went down there and you were bold, you were certain of yourself. You had the confidence that you could come down there and make your demands and walk out of there and bluff your way out of there." He goes, "That is the most impressive thing that I've ever heard about you." He goes, "Stopping of the bombing of our corporate headquarters was nothing that gained the respect that you gained out of me for what you did that night." So
Hey, Charles,
that's,
you want to give us some finishing stuff before you go, since it's been over 2 hours? Because I know you probably need to get going.
yeah, it's past my bedtime.
But it's good getting all this information as much as possible. That's why we want to make sure that they do go ahead, if they really want to care enough about everything you had to say about JonBenet Ramsey case or something else. Go to all the videos that Blackstone Lawyer and Charles Rogers has. Okay, go to every one of them and listen through them all the way. Okay, then you're going to be able to get as much information. Take notes if you have to, or something like that. That would help you to further understand, what's going on with this.
Well, it'll definitely change your stance about the Zionist state of Israel. It'll definitely open your eyes to the involvement of the Mossad and the gridiron in the financial system, who is running this country behind the scenes in the financial part of it. Um, the corporations who are involved in the terrorism and child sex trafficking his
And they're
company's
thinking, like, why would they hurt their own companies? Like GM, and um, Home
well, the
Depot. When they
way I look at it is there were some couples that worked at the Home Depot corporate headquarters. The morning that I went walking into the store that morning, Roger Nance was on his way out and when I saw him, he turned his head away, like I didn't see him. And go walk by, "Hey, Roger." He keeps walking by, and I turned around and went walking toward him, going out the door. So Roger Nance, and he stopped and he turned around and said, "You're not supposed to be here." And I'm like, "Oh boy, okay, Roger. Didn't know y'all was involved in this mess. Just do me a favor and go outside and tell Jeff Cook and Joey Davis not to shoot me. I just can't sit here and allow y'all to kill all those people over there in the corporate headquarters this morning. I just got to put a stop to it. That's maybe we can meet later on and go have a cup of coffee and talk about this." "Oh no, I got work I got to go do. So when I turn around, I go walking away. That's when Craig Manier comes walking over toward him with this big old grin on his face. Craig's a pretty good sized guy, about 6'3", maybe 6
yeah,
foot
Big Bird.
4. Yeah, Big Bird. That's why I call him Big Bird, because he can outrun John Andrew when it comes to showing up to fight me. That's for sure. Uh, that's why I call him Big Bird. The Big Chicken, well, that's the sheriff of Cobb County, so that's why Craig Owens is Big Bird. Even though he's got the title of the Burger King sheriff, he's still, the Big Chicken. He might not be Foghorn Leghorn, but he's still the Big Chicken.
That's pretty. I mean, that's wasting taxpayers' money to call some of your deputies over there and get on to the crew because they fix your hamburger different than what you said.
Well, it's too doggone cheap to buy two Whoppers. You wanted one cut in half where he could give his friend that was with him. And, with somebody like me that worked for a living, I had somebody with me. I'd buy me a Whopper. I'd buy them a Whopper.
Right.
I don't think you get any more of a cheapskate than that. Won't cut your Whopper in half because you're too doggone stingy to buy two.
Well, I'm sure that looked really good for his friend, when he behaved in that manner too,
Yeah. I've lost a lot of confidence in the law enforcement in Cobb County over this, especially the sheriffs. We called over there 2 years ago, wanted to sit down and talk to him about the evidence I had over the attempted truck bombing of the Home Depot corporate headquarters, to have an
Right.
assistant sit there and tell me I had no proof. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say what kind of proof I do have, but it has been presented in court. It is
Yeah.
documented in court in the Roger
And
Nance
you
versus
cannot
Charles
tell
Rogers
everybody what
case
your
in the Fulton County State Court.
and you can't tell everybody what your evidence is or something like that because that's going to help them in their cases against you. And it's like you don't go and you tell them what you got,
Mm-hmm. But I got a ton of witnesses. They couldn't go out here and eliminate all the witnesses. They've been trying. You can give them credit for that. But
Right.
there's still a ton of witnesses that they can't get to. They can't go out here. It's too big. That was 3,200 employees at the General Motors assembly plant there in Dorville.
I remember not too long ago too that there was a vehicle that had a bad wreck and like getting off the interstate or something like that, it was speeding.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember how all of a sudden you're like, okay, I wonder if that was another case of them chasing somebody down,
Well, they still had the record. When I talked to the cop, they still had the record from that incident with Betty Elrod's sister, Betty Elrod's brick mailbox.
Yeah, and at the time, McLaughlin was living in Tennessee when he had done this. He
Yeah,
was
yeah, he's
not
from
a
Lexington,
judge at the
Tennessee.
time in over there.
Well, um, you know, they're going to try to cover up everything they can cover up because they know that once this gets out, and it can even be the end of Donald Trump if he wants to keep going over there and supporting Israel and the genocide that they're committing over there in Gaza. They want to use they want to send our boys over there to defend Israel. And if you're in any part of Christian, or if you're a believer, the last person in the world you're going to want to support are those who take pride in having him crucified, who are out there teaching that he is in hell bullying human excrement. Okay.
Uh huh.
Because that is what Ron Brill believes. That is what people like Bernie Marcus believed. Arthur Blank.
That
Okay.
are the fake Jewish people, right? The fake Israel.
Yeah, they're really the Bolsheviks, the Ashkenazic Jews. They adopted the Pharisees' Judaism, which is the Talmud, which we call the doctrine of pedophiles. That is their belief. They believe that they teach that Jesus was a winebibber, a magician, um, and a son of a harlot.
Because
Who
his
got
real name was Yeshua, and then they changed it over to Jesus, and Jesus was what was that?
he was the son of a whore, who got pregnant by a Roman soldier.
Boy,
I
they're
mean,
really lying in it. They're lying
yeah,
it thick, ain't they?
yeah. Um, anyone, anyone that is not a Zionist Jew is the goy. They can do with the goy whatever they want to do. They can do to their children whatever they deem fit. They can they can sexually assault them, murder them. They're doing nothing more than murdering an animal. Well, my question for them, well, what about the other tribes of Israel? Who are we? Now they have a hard time with that. And they're like, well, we're Israel. Well, no, you're not. They're not even of they're not even of the lineage. They
Exactly.
adopted they adopted the Talmud. Their ultimate goal is to destroy every Christian in the world, or even Messianic people who believe in Messianic Judaism. That has always been their objective, to destroy the United States through a racial war. Wasn't because of the races, but to the people's faith, the one we call Jesus. And that will continue being their goal. That's why they'll go out here and they'll finance the Black Lives Matter. They'll finance the Aryan Brotherhood. I mean, for crying out loud, my brother became a member of the Midwestern Bank Banners of the Aryan Republican Army, and these people called themselves the Army of God.
Wow.
Well, everybody in Murphy said, Charles, when you refer to this, just call them the Army of Godless. And that's the people in Murphy, North Carolina, people that used to hide out Eric Rudolph, and tried to protect him until they found out the truth about him.
Yeah, at first I thought it was just like in to try to save babies when he tried to bomb that abortion clinic. Kind of find out, no, it's worse than that. What they're
No, yeah,
doing.
yeah. Them abortionists out there, murdering potential victims. You know, If anything, that'd be the only reason they'd have against abortionists. More babies they abort, less children they have to victimize. And there's nothing pro-life about these people. A lot of them, believe it or not, call themselves conservatives, members of the Republican Army. Even though I supported Trump over Clinton and supported him over Biden, okay, where was a better candidate that the Democrats had to offer? They didn't have one. So, of course, who was I going to support? But now I'm starting to, like a lot of other people, starting to have second thoughts whenever we hear that, we're going to support Israel. I'm sorry, these are the same people, the way I see it, that are partnered with the same people who have been trying to kill me since 1975. And it's like back in, it's like, I think it was like back in 2008 and 2009. I asked them again. I said, well, are y'all going to send any more I can knock out? You know, they lost, they had two of them coming over there, Sprayberry Crossing at Chico Dills. Three of my buddies grew up with sitting over there watching the whole thing. I was by myself, and these guys came in there and come walk at me and say, you Charles Rogers? I said, yeah, I'm Charles. Well, we need you to go with us. Oh, okay, well, where are we going? Oh, well, you'll find that out when we get there. I said, well, I don't operate that way. I always like to know where I'm going first.
Exactly.
Well, we're not telling you.
Well, I'm not going.
Yeah, I was like, well, what if I decide I want to go? Oh, we will make you go. I said, you and whose army? Oh, we got plenty of help here. I said, what, those three sitting over there, that table going well with you too? Oh, yeah, they're with us. And I'm like, okay. All right, there's still not enough. You got any more? Next thing I know, I'm being swung at, knocking the bald headed one down. One comes up behind me and push him back toward the pool table. And by the time I turn around, the other one's coming back toward me again and knock him down. He's out for the count. The other one comes back up. I'm knocking him back up against the pool table and hit him with that right hook. And he goes rolling on down, hit him with the left, make sure he went out. Well, he succumbed to his injuries after midnight. The other one, they put him in ICU. I went over the next day to see if I'd see my three buddies in there because they jumped up, going to come over and intervene and break it up. But they didn't even have enough time to it happen that fast.
Wow.
So before the police arrived, they said, Charles, just come over here and sit with us before the police get here. We'll make sure nothing happens to you. So I went over there and sat with them. So I went back over there the next day to see if they were in there. I didn't know that one guy died. And that is actually the only one that I have actually had to kill myself. Frank Sheldon, Andrea Strassmeyer, and Dave Holloway, they were killed by people protecting me up there in Andrews and Topton, North Carolina. Okay, after my standoff with Eric Ridolph. But I can honestly say the only human being that I have ever killed in my life was in self-defense there at Chico Dills in 2006. And that sent a loud message to him. Yeah, about 2 weeks later, John Andrew Ramsey and 5 of his buddies followed me over to the place there, the Place Tavern there down Sandy Plains Road. And same 3 buddies was in there that evening. They followed me in there.
And that was before the murder of, or after the murder of Beth.
Of who?
Of Beth.
Of who?
Beth Ramsey.
Oh, this is way after. This is in 2006.
Okay.
And I got confronted by the same police officer, another police officer, and a detective. I decided to walk over there instead of drive over there because my house wasn't too far away. So I decided to walk over there that evening. And they saw me walking over and they pulled over. They intended to arrest me, is what they intended to do. And they were like, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm coming back over here to see if my buddy's back over here, yesterday and last night." "Oh, no, they're not over there. That's a crime scene." I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, we just wanted to advise you um, that the second guy that you knocked out over by the pool table, he succumbed to his injuries just after midnight." And I was like, "Really?" So the cop asked me, "Does that make you feel bad?" And I was like, "Well, why is it supposed to?" I said, I feel sorry that his parents lost a son. I feel sorry for his siblings who lost a brother. I feel sorry for his, cousins who lost their cousins, or his nieces and nephews who lost an uncle. I said, but I don't have any type of remorse for the loss of his life because it's better off him than me. And he goes, "Oh, yeah, well, we would like to know why you're saying these guys confronted you when you were sitting with the other three." I said, "I told you last night I wasn't sitting with the other three until after the incident. I was over there standing by myself and was drinking my first beer, which was going to be my only beer, when they confronted me." I said, "What are you trying to get me to do? Lie to you and change my story where you can arrest me?" I said, this should send a loud message to the rest of his colleagues that I'm just going to make it a point just to hit that hard on every one of them that decides to confront me again. So I'll make it a point to send more of them to the grave if they want to keep sending them. And he goes, "Well, that's what you get for going out here and trying to stop child trafficking. This is why you're out of Cobb County." I said, "Well, that's not going to happen." I said, you tell old Bentley's over there on Bentley Farm, go ahead and send some more, because I am not going to stop fighting child trafficking, if that's what you call it. I said, "I don't care if they got a badge or not. Hey, you tell them I said so." So, regardless to say, they said if they weren't going to send any more to try to abduct me, they would just shoot me.
Wow.
So,
So you ready to call it stop? I want to thank you so much for sticking up and doing this. I know you got thrown into it. You probably wouldn't have wanted to do it had you not been thrown into it. I appreciate you for getting the words out, trying to
well,
protect everybody, the
yeah,
kids.
thank you for your support and thank you for having me on. And thank you,
We're
everyone
pulling
else,
for
for
you.
listening.
We're pulling for you in North Carolina for what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to give them about another week. I got some other aces up my sleeve. I'll pull if they don't want to. Don't want to say what it is, but
Yeah.
um, if they think that they're going to try to keep it under the, covered up from the view of the American people, I almost recruited my own little private army over there in Western North Carolina.
Uh-huh.
And you can't beat that word of mouth advertisement once they find out what's really going on. Word of the mouth is about to spread across this country like wildfire.
It needs to.
So,
And just
well,
because a
again,
person might seem like the best person that ever, like the people at Home Depot that they were saying that, oh, this person was a really good person. It really would help anybody or anything like that. Just because they appear to be a good person does not mean that they did not go out there and murder kids and
look at
traffic
that.
kids.
Look at that thug. He's dead. I don't like talking about dead people, including that older brother of mine. But look
Uh-huh.
at that thug on the left named Bill Hutson.
Right.
I am confident him and that older brother of mine and the others who have died are burning in hell.
Oh yeah.
They don't have no chance to come back, man up, and confess to their sins before the world and pick up the cross and follow for the sins that they have committed. They're dead.
Right. And they
And when
fought
I
to their
almost
dying
tried to
day
make
to
them,
try to protect this their little thing, their group of people with its rich and money and all this, and hurt people and hurt kids and all this. And like you said, the other day, um, and it's something I've been saying too. I'm glad they're going and catching a lot of these pedophiles and stuff, but why aren't they catching these bigger, higher ups that's with the government? Why aren't they going ahead and get them? So I'm dissatisfied until we see more of those type of people arrested, because right now it's just looking like you're covering up for yourself just so these other people. And how do we know they're not actually setting somebody else up saying that they did it just to make themselves look good too? You know what I'm saying?
well, yeah, like they planted the wires in my pickup truck. Um, you know, that Rudolph's used to build the explosives for Centennial Park, thinking they was going to set me up for the Centennial Park attack.
Exactly.
You know, like they, you know, like they try to convince people. You know, Joey Davis and Cook Brothers tried to convince his, stepmother and dad over there at the Waffle King that they thought I was the one that, murdered little John Bonet and got his. They got their bubbles busted when they found out that the morning after Christmas I was filling in for Joey as a dishwasher there at the Waffle King. So, I would have had been Superman or one hellacious magical rug to jump on and fly all the way back to Murphy, North Carolina, being there 8 o'clock in the morning to make that $100 in 3 hours washing dishes that Joey loved to make every year before, but couldn't make because he was in Boulder, Colorado during the homicide of John Benet Ramsey. So
Whoa.
they came back to Murphy and they made themselves the suspects of John Benet's murder. They did it themselves. I didn't have to say a word, just show up for breakfast the 26th of December to have breakfast. And, you know, Valerie and all the other waitresses like, hey, Charlie, you'll make $100 washing dishes this morning for about 3 hours. Well, shoot, that's good money. Heck yeah. I'm not too proud to wash dishes to make an honest dollar.
Exactly.
So that's how Rudolph and the cooks, made themselves their, suspects when they came back to Murphy from Boulder. Was that kind of stuff right there. So
Yeah, they told on themselves, didn't they?
they sure did.
But Bill, hold on a few minutes. I'm doing a live still, so hold on.
Well, you have a good night, Miss Clark, and everybody else have a good evening. And
You
please
have a
keep
good
me in
night
your
too. Thank you
prayers.
so much. We really appreciate all this your information you're giving us, and thank you for fighting for us too.
Well,
and thoughts and prayers for your safety. And there's other stuff that you're going through trying to get done.
well, just do what Jesus said. Thank our Heavenly Father for sending me to do what I done and provided me the protection that He's provided, because I couldn't have done
Continue.
it without Him.
Amen. And for the protection he's been doing for me too, with me getting it
Yes,
out.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Both of us is like that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
These are diabolical people here.
They
Thank you
are.
so much. And let me know when you would like to do another one. Just hit me up, and we'll play it by ear and try to do it, okay?
Okay.
I say God bless you and God bless everyone that's here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and Godspeed yourself.
You too. Bye-bye.